Hello, everyone. What if I told you that I have been traveling the world for the last 4 years for less than 25 euros a day? I just ran the numbers, and my husband and I, we both spend 1,400 euros a month on average, and that leaves us with about 700 euros per person. And this includes all our expenses, apart from the ones that I have for my business, but it really includes all our living costs. So, all our traveling, accommodation, food, eating out, insurances, expenses that we had for our health. We also still own a car. And over the years, we really did plenty of exciting things. So we spent a few months in South America. I flew to the US. And just in the last 12 months, we spent a few months in Spain. Then we did a road trip back home via the French Riviera, via Italy, back home to Austria. Then we flew to Ireland. We spent a few months in Slovenia and we walked the Camino de Santiago. So we really did lots of exciting things. And as many of you know, we gave up our apartment and sold all our things a few years ago. And yes, that obviously helps a lot to keep our costs low. But I know that for many of you, this is not an option. So this is not included here as a tip. For us, it was just having either an apartment or traveling. Both was not possible with our budget. But apart from not having these monthly costs, traveling is still costing us a lot of money. We still need a place to sleep every night. We need to eat, we need to travel. All those things cost a lot of money. And to do this for 25 euros a day, I got quite creative, I think, to keep our costs low. So today I want to share I think there are 13 best ways on how I save money while traveling. And I'm also going to share one thing where people always think that it saves me a lot of money, but in reality, I think it doesn't. And those tips are not ordered by importance or something. I just structured them a little bit. So first, it's all about activities, then about food, then accommodation, and at the end, just some random tips. And that being said, let's start with the first tip, and that is to find free activities. Now, obviously, it's an old trick to find free activities. Me and my husband, we love hiking, or we often walk through cities because usually all the sites are within walking distance. But those things are kind of obvious. But one thing that we saved a lot of money on over the years is that we got to visit lots of sites and museums for free. Many places all over the world can be visited for free at certain times of the day or sometimes on certain days of the month. For example, there's lots of museums like the Prado Museum in Madrid that can be visited for free. I think it's the last 2 hours of the day. Also in Rome, the Vatican can be visited for free on the last Sunday in the month, and the Colosseum, for example, on the first Sunday of the month. So if you plan that well, you can visit both of them in 1 week. And my favorite free visit recently was a cave in Spain where they let in 60 people before the first tour starts. So we were basically able to walk through this huge cave basically all by ourselves, and that was a lot of fun. And usually it helps when you're a little bit more flexible and you don't have to visit exactly that museum at exactly that time on that day. And it's also important to do your research because, in my opinion, many of those places really don't make it very obvious that you could see those sites for free. For example, the Museum of Natural History in New York hides this information deep down in their frequently asked questions. So there, one of the questions is something like which groups qualify for waived admission fees. And one of the answers is visitors who enter the museum during the last hour of the day. So make sure to do your research when you want to visit something. I often just Google the site that I want to visit plus free admission. And also keep an eye out for the requirements because sometimes they want you to reserve a free ticket 2 days before. Sometimes they just want you to show up and stand in line. So they really don't make it that easy, but it's doable. And now let's move on to food. And one thing that saves us a lot of money is that we eat a lot of meals in supermarkets and in bakeries. So we really embrace supermarket meals, and I think that so many good, delicious things can be found in supermarkets around the world. So here in Austria, I can walk in any supermarket, and most of them have a deli counter, I think that's what it calls, where they have the fresh sausages and meats and hams and lots of cheese that they cut for you to take. And there you can ask them to put any of those things inside a sandwich for you, and then it's extremely cheap. Just to show you, I picked one up. So this is how you then get it. It's freshly made by the nice lady, and the cost is €1.29. I'll just open it up so you can see it. This is a Wurstsemme. It's a nice, fresh and crunchy roll. There's quite a lot of Wurst inside. I have the Pikantwurst, and there's also a few pickles. And that is going to be my dinner today. Someone saw my Wurstsemme. This is mine. I'm not gonna share. You can have a belly rub, but not my Wurstsemme. And I think most supermarkets everywhere have some snack that you can pick up, like the fresh focaccia in Italy or also pão de queijo in Brazil. I just need a good pão de queijo and I'm happy. And my favorite is Mercadona in Spain. They have like huge counters of fresh food they prepared for takeaway. And in the store, they usually have seating areas with a microwave and some cutlery where you can heat up and eat there. And that's very, very nice. The next thing that saves us a lot of money while traveling is bringing my water cooker stick. I think the official name is immersion heater, but we always bring it with us when we travel with the car and sometimes even when I fly, depending on the length of the trip. And it really saves us so much money. And what you can do with this thing is just heat up some water. And I love drinking tea, but I refuse to pay 4 euros or more for a tap warm water with a cheap tea bag. And my husband drinks coffee, so he uses hot water then to make instant coffee. And it often comes in very handy to just have an emergency ramen meal somewhere in a hotel room. To heat up water with this stick, you usually need a heat-proof container. And I usually travel with this tumbler from Hydro Flask. So I can just hang this cooker in here and heat it up anywhere. And I like this tumbler very much because it keeps my drinks hot and also cold, which is especially useful in countries like Spain. And it also comes with a lid and it fits into the bottle holder of my car. So it's very useful to have my tea with me on the go. So the next thing that saves us a lot of money is having a few staple recipes that we can use to cook ourselves and also that minimize food waste. I think everybody knows that cooking for yourself helps save a lot of money. And for us, it's true that going out while traveling, especially on long trips, is really a treat and not the norm. On long trips, I often find that restaurant food gets very boring because everywhere you go, they more or less serve you the same thing, especially in rural areas where we usually like to stay. And I also think that the real local delicacies, like the type of food that your parents or your grandparents cooked for you, is not necessarily the stuff that they serve in restaurants. At least my favorite Austrian dishes, there is no restaurant anywhere here that would serve them. You really have to make them for yourself. So obviously it's good for the money that we love cooking ourselves, but also I think that supermarkets and like markets are generally full of great ingredients that we can try abroad. So when we stay somewhere, we always try to have a kitchen available. And when we travel with the car, I also have my kitchen bag with a few kitchen utensils that I bring with me. I already did a video about that. I will link it below in the description. But those things help us a lot to just prepare simple meals for us. And then we always plan out our meals because we always try to keep food waste at the minimum. And the goal is to have no groceries left at the end of our stay. So over the years, we collected a few staple recipes that we really enjoy making that cover us from the kitchen is empty and we're leaving in 2 days and everything we buy we have to use up immediately to kind of meals that, okay, we're here for 2 weeks, but we want to be at zero at the end. And then we always add a few local dishes to the mix, preferably with ingredients that we don't get at home. So we always search for local recipes online or ask neighbors or something. And then it's almost like taking an expensive cooking class abroad. But for the price that we would usually pay for one of those cooking classes, we almost eat for the whole week. So now let's talk about a few ways that we found to reduce our accommodation costs. And by far the biggest money saver for us is doing house sitting. So for the next few months, we are fully booked. At the moment, we are here in Austria. In a few weeks, we're going to the Tuscany in Italy for a few weeks. And then afterwards, we're having another house sit in Munich, Germany. So we always use Trusted Housesitters, and I already did a video where I talk about how we do that and how we apply for sits. So I will put the link for you in the description. I also have a discount code for Trusted Housesitters. And I recently signed up for their affiliate program because I use it and I recommend it so much. So if you want to help me, then use this link, but I will also put the normal non-affiliate link there. So just use whichever you prefer. So on Trusted House Sitters, you can find house sits worldwide. There's short one, long ones, all kinds of pets. We don't get paid doing that, but we get a place to sleep for free. And this saves us a lot of money since we don't have to pay for accommodation. The only thing you have to be a little bit careful about is with visa requirements, because some countries require you to have a work visa when you want to do that. But I can give you no general advice for that because it also depends on the country that you're from and the country you want to go. So just make sure to do your research. The next thing that saves us a lot of money is that we usually travel slow and that we try to stay somewhat flexible with our dates. Because the more flexible are and the longer your stay is, the cheaper it usually gets. So on Airbnb, for example, you get very nice discounts when you stay longer than 28 days in the same place. And we often also just talk to hotels when we wanted to stay longer to get a better price. So for example, here, if I would want to go to Spain next year for a month in May, as you can see, the normal price for some would be, for example, 2,150, and when you stay for a month, it's reduced to 907. And staying flexible with dates helps us, especially when it comes to transportation. So I always use Google Flights to find the best dates with the cheapest prices to go. And I also already did a video on how I did that, and I will also link it below. And the next thing that always reduces our accommodation cost is to just stay outside of the tourist zones. So when we want to visit a city or a site, we never ever sleep or even park inside the city. We usually try to find a place on the outskirts or maybe even a few villages away. And what I usually like to do is that first I research the public transport connections and then I see which villages around it have good connection. And then we find a place to stay somewhere there, which is usually a lot cheaper and just as comfortable as staying in the middle of the city, because usually we just have a few meters to the train station and then half an hour later we're in the middle of the city. And we don't have to worry about finding an overpriced parking place in there or even worry about driving in the city, because I'm never ever going to drive in Rome again. So for us, staying in the outskirts and just using public transport saves a lot of nerves for me and is also a lot cheaper. So now let's move on to some general tips. And the first one is to be a traveler and not a tourist. So for me, a tourist is someone who travels for pleasure. So they want to have comfortable accommodations, eat out every day, visit all the popular attractions, and not worry too much about how they get from A to B, so be as comfortable as possible. And sometimes we are also tourists, but generally, especially when we travel long term, we try to be more travelers. And the traveler for me is someone who seeks more connection with the locals, stay in off the beaten track places, tries to have some more authentic experiences and travel slow and try to live like the locals. So usually we just want a simple but clean accommodation and we don't mind using things like public transport. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with being a tourist. It's just that for me, some things that tourists like to do are simply not worth the money. So for example, I don't need to drink an Aperol Spritz that costs me 20 euros just to sit in front of the cathedral in Milano with 50,000 other tourists. I prefer much more to have my own drink later in my accommodation in the countryside with a nice view of the sunset. And rather than visiting any overcrowded tourist sites, it makes me much more happy to just help a farmer picking his olives, for example. The next thing that saves me a lot of money is that I buy no crap, otherwise known as souvenirs. Souvenirs, honestly, are not worth buying for me. They're usually overpriced and low quality, and I think there is already enough trash in this world. I don't need to contribute any more to it than I'm already doing with just buying groceries, for example. I prefer much more to have experiences instead, and if I take away a nice picture from that place, that's more than enough for me. So the next thing that helps us a lot with our finances is that we have a very strict monthly budget and we always try to stick to it. So this strict monthly budget helps us not to overspend, but it also gives me a lot of peace of mind. So what we did for us is that we have a limit, a threshold, and if our savings would ever go below that, we would go and find normal jobs again for a while to just secure our finances. So every cent that we earn always goes to the savings account. If we have a good month, we don't splurge like many other people do. We save it all. And by knowing how much our monthly budget is, the 1,400, and how much we have saved, we always know how many months we would still be able to travel, even if we would not earn a single cent anymore. I use a paid software called YNAB. You need a budget to keep track of my budget. And so far, we did not go below that limit yet, so we can continue traveling. The next thing that saves us a lot of money is that we hand wash our laundry, and I already did another video that I will link below where I talk about how I do that. We usually avoid laundromats because, first off, with our few clothes, it's not really worth running a load, and second, drying and washing usually costs us around 10 euros. The same goes with hotel laundry services. I don't need my travel clothes ironed or something, so for me, that's just not feasible. And also another thing to consider is if you're traveling with merino wool clothes, like I did in the past, that laundromats, hotel laundry services usually are not equipped to treat merino wool properly. And I already did a video where I talk about why I am not using merino wool t-shirts for travel anymore, and I will also link it in the description. Another thing that saves me a lot of money is that I use Revolut and Wise to pay abroad in foreign currencies. So banking fees, especially abroad, can be quite high. The fees that my Austrian bank would charge me are really not funny anymore. So I still have an Austrian debit card and also my credit card as a backup, but for traveling abroad with foreign currencies, I always use Revolut and Wise. I have the free account on both of them. I just had to pay for the shipping of the physical card. And I like them because the fees are lower and they usually also have the better exchange rates. But again, I already did a video about those things as well, and I will link it below. Another thing that we had to learn over time is that sometimes it's okay to ask for a refund. I know that there's many people who try to find like the tiniest flaws just to complain and get the money back or get a part of the money back. That's not what I mean. But sometimes things are just truly not up to your expectations or how they should be. And in those situations, I really don't mind just asking for my money back anymore. So for example, when we walked the Camino de Santiago, we had one room that was infested with bed bugs. We got the money back. And once we booked a very nice hotel on the beach in Brazil, and we talked to them and asked them to give us a quiet room. And then they just had a wedding party that night 5 meters from our room going on until 5 o'clock in the morning. And in that case, since we were talking to them, asking for a quiet room, I think they should have just advised us that there will be a party on the premises because we booked 3 days before. So there's no way they did not know that. So in situations like this, we just go there, politely say what's happening and get the refund. The next thing that saves me money is traveling with a partner. I usually travel with my husband, so that means that many costs can be split by two. Single rooms in hotels cost almost as much as double rooms. So if you have someone you like and don't mind traveling with and sharing a room, I think is a great way to keep the costs low. And now let's move on to the last point, and that is the one thing where people always think it saves me a lot of money, but I think it doesn't. And that is traveling hand luggage only. I always travel with a carry-on sized bag only. And even though I save some money for luggage on flights, I think that this way of travel in the bottom line costs me more money than it saves me. Because even though I like to think I'm quite a minimalist in like 99% of my life, the travel gear addiction is real. If you have any tips how you save money while traveling, or maybe even on how to overcome the travel gear addiction, let me know in the comments. I always love reading them, but I have to admit it's getting harder and harder to keep up with replying to them, but I'll try my best. And if you want to make me very happy, then consider subscribing to my monthly newsletter. or like this video or subscribe to this channel. And other than that, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!